Kia ora and welcome to CIO Leadership Live New Zealand. I'm your host, Kathy O'Sullivan, editor for CIO New Zealand. My guest today is Cobus Nel, General Manager for Information Services and Technology at Transpower. Hello, Cobus. How are you doing today?
Hi, Kathy. I'm great. And how are you?
Great. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you on CIO Leadership Live today. So just to kick us off, could you tell us a little bit more about your role and what your team at Transpower does?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I'll start with just what Transpower does. And we're in a unique position. We don't generate electricity and we don't sell electricity either. We connect the generators to distribution companies, which most people will know as Wellington Electricity, Vector, etc. And transport that electricity from the generators to those houses and businesses. My division looks after all the services that makes that possible from a digital perspective. So that's the telecommunications network, which we are in the unique position as well that we have to maintain this high availability, low latency telecoms fiber network to provide some unique utility services. And then on top of that, we've got the enterprise IT services we provide that most organizations are familiar with, and that's your financial management systems, HR systems, spatial. And I always joke and say we probably have an instance of nearly every platform that's available in the market to run our business. And then on top of that, we run applications that we call critical applications that control the national grid, and also the system. So we do perform a system operation function, which is optimizing the dispatch of energy through control rooms. And we develop a lot of that software in-house and then do some integration with third parties.
So transformation is probably a huge part of that and what your team focus on. And the word transformation, it is, it's a buzzword. It's used quite regularly in many organizations, but transformation is not an easy thing to do. So how has that approach taken shape in your own career?
I think if you've been in the career as long as I have, my grey hair shows it's been a while, then you remember the days when transformation was code for structural change, and there was usually a driver to fundamentally change the way the business operates, and that would be some burning platform, whether there's a change in ownership, a merger, acquisitions, and it used to be a 3-year type process that you went through. It was quite disruptive, and afterwards you emerged punch drunk and try to run the business. I think the world's changed. We now have far more focused transformation programs, and it tends to be in areas that we identify that is really critical to our business, and we need to either drive effectiveness or efficiency and make changes. We jokingly say in Transpower, we follow the money. So you go and look at those areas where really you'll get maximum benefits from changing the way you do the job. So I think that's been the shift. And digital has been attached to the front of transformation more recently, but I think that hasn't really changed. There's always been digital involved. It just used to be ERP systems that drove most of the change, and now it's mobility and other aspects.
Indeed. So walking back from that end product of transformation, what do you think are some of the key steps CIOs must take along the way? Is there ever a starting point to kick off a transformation?
Yeah, I think we're in a unique position as individuals, in organizations, that we touch all the parts of the business. You're constantly engaging with stakeholders, running different processes. So we've got the ability to understand and recognize where there's areas that could really be optimized, and work with that business leaders to say, here's places that we can really contribute and drive. We have to be mindful of change fatigue, though, and how much change organizations can survive. That is something that we have to be constantly mindful as technologists, that we don't go and try and introduce technology everywhere at the same time. I think that's the real challenge for us is to really sit with business owners and decide what is the place of digital in their transformation. And at the same time, every time we modernize a platform, say, hey, that modernization is an opportunity to do things slightly different. And we modernize quite often. We elect to now and then replace platforms with a new platform, and then that should really be the trigger to say, are we going to do something fundamentally different here, or we're just doing some life cycle maintenance activities. And with the movement to software as a service, etc., there's quite large changes taking place in our application suite, which gives us those opportunities.
And I'm glad you touched on change fatigue, because burnout's definitely a real thing. And I know other CIOs are also mindful of that change fatigue, both on their people, but also on the organization. Are there any other challenges or roadblocks that come up when you're transforming that CIOs should be mindful of?
Yeah, I think that the willingness to challenge the status quo is always a challenge. You will always have resistance in organization to say that there's areas that there's nothing wrong here. Why are we changing? I think that is the one thing. We also have quite a few processes that's end-to-end in an organization, and you have to be really mindful that you don't go and inject change in the middle of a process and hope for the best. You have to very systematically look at this process and do the transformation. And we've learned over the time in Transpower, and it may be different in other organizations, we can probably do 2 to 3 changes in the organization on an annual basis. At that point, we just start running out of people. And because like many organizations, we've got about 1,000 people, of which 120 or 30 are people managers. But out of that community, there's between 20 and 40 that really get involved in any change initiative, and they kind of the core change managers in the organization. So you have to consider how much change you can put them through and how much they can support on an annual basis. So we're very mindful that we sometimes have great ideas, but that we put it on ice for a period of time to just give our managers the capacity to actually be able to partake in these change initiatives.
Absolutely. Making it sustainable is definitely a great thing to be mindful of. So I'm curious, Cobus, do you see transformation as a project with deadlines and milestones, or do you like to see transformation as just an ongoing development within a business? Is there an end date to transformation?
I think I'd say both. We've got transformations which we projectize and very systematically work through to embed the business change. Examples would be, if we do conduct a condition assessment, we traditionally flew choppers and observed the conductors, and we've moved over the last couple of years to using drone technology. But you have to introduce that as a business change and embed the processes surrounding what do you do with the captured imaging, where do you store it, how do you use it, how do you dispose of it, and you can't do that on an ad hoc basis. You have to very systematically do that change, because you have to take all your service providers with you on it. Then there's other areas that's quite incremental, where you say, hey, I'm doing certain tasks which I just want to incrementally improve and transform the way we do. And that's more organic process. That's more the agile with a capital A process versus the other. So we see both of them. I think in organizations that got complex end-to-end processes, that projectizing some transformation is really important, and there is a start and a stop to those. Otherwise, they just don't stick, unfortunately.
Yeah, and back to change being sustainable. So you touched on that briefly there, but as general manager for IST, in what ways do you collaborate and influence Transpower and its leadership team?
I think as CIOs, CTOs, CDOs, whatever you want to call us, we've been fortunate that if you go back 20 years, everybody was lobbying to get a seat at the table. And now we've got a seat at the table, and I'm fortunate to be one of those that reports in the CEO and forms part of the executive team. That means I've got really access to everybody around me and in the organizational decision making. With that, however, does come a certain accountability that your peers then look at you not just as a technologist or a technical expert, but as a general manager. So you have to make sure that you then deliver more value than just in the ICT space. And I think I'd like to think I bring commercial acumen and and strategic thinking to the table. But I think that access comes, both ways. So there's an expectation that you deliver more than you can, and at the same time, you've got access to all this richness of conversations around you where you can find opportunities to deliver value. We're a very technical organization, so there's an expectation that in our domains we are technical experts, which is not always the case. I think some CIOs and their organizations will have different expectations. And our organization, because it's an engineering business, there's expectation that you're an expert in your field and you're well versed in the technology, which fortunately I am, which means that that's a contribution I can bring to the table.
And as you've said, the role of CIO, CTO, it is evolving. So what do you think are some of the key attributes of a modern day CIO when it comes to leadership?
I think we need to understand that we're now business leaders. We're not IT leaders. And I think that is something that we have to make sure that our future CIOs understand that they have to invest the same amount in their business and leadership training than they do in their technical training. Most of us grow up through a technical pathway of some sorts. I'm an ex-telecoms engineer, so and whether you're through the IT chains or other areas. But I think we need to make sure that we invest in senior and business leadership skills, MBAs, etc., whatever you prefer. But really then be able to, at that leadership table, be able to contribute as a strategic thinker and a business leader rather than just an IT professional. And I think that demands will increase over time. And I think that's why we see a lot of the titles changing from CIO to CTO, CDO, is to try and reflect that changing role of what a CIO traditionally used to fulfill from what the expectations are these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a big war for talent at the moment, as you will know. It's a very tight labor market. So when it comes to your own team and Transpower, how are you creating an internal culture that really helps your people to thrive?
We're really big on career development and spending a lot of time on that in conversations, at least quarterly, with our staff. I think we, in this war of talent, and many of the other CIOs would have reflected on that in your interviews, it is really important to say, how do we develop our internal staff that we've already got internally into becoming and promoting them in their careers into more senior positions. What is important then in organizations, we have to create career paths for them, specifically the technical career paths that they can develop and be quite clear on what success looks like. We're trying our best, and it's to when we have development and career conversations with our staff, to put Transpower aside and focus on what the individual want to achieve in their career and support them with that. And then if there's a match, well, good for us. We can find opportunities internally to match it. But I think it's really important that you don't mix the two. Otherwise, you don't have real career and progression conversations if you don't give people an opportunity to think wider than just what they can achieve within our organization. We also recognize that sometimes people have to leave and come back, that they need to widen their experience to be really successful again when they come back within Transpower. So we do have quite a large portion of our staff that at some point in their career go and work somewhere else and then come back later to work for us again. So I think we need to be open-minded in that, and then that career pathways where we can, understanding that a lot of our entry roles are outsourced, like many organizations have. Our IT roles are outsourced to third parties. We've tried to create a lot of associate and type roles which are entry level, but then work with our service provider partners and say, okay, well, how do we help them to attract more talent into the pipeline, which can then develop further into their organization or ours.
And I guess another challenge for the IT industry is that we don't have enough diversity in IT roles. So what practical things do you think can be done to attract more diverse candidates to IT roles and to better reflect the Aotearoa that we live in?
Yeah, I think that's, this is a problem we have as not just the IT industry in general, and I know there's a lot of work going on in a lot of organizations around attracting and keeping young people more interested in the STEM subjects. So I think it's a conscious and collaborative effort to try and make an organization more diverse and inclusive. And you really have to go and look from everything from the way, how inclusive are your policies and flexible work arrangements, etc., and then start reporting on aspects of like gender pay gap, so that you understand where you stand and you're quite transparent around this is what we're doing to change it. We've implemented, like many other organizations, a 40-20 workforce target, which is 40% male, 40% female, and then 20% flex between the groupings. And we recognize it's a simplistic model, but without targets, you're not going to achieve much. I think what we do put in is a lot of effort to make various cultures inclusive as well in Transpower, with celebrations of Diwali and Eid at the end of Ramadan and Chinese New Year, etc. Because we also recognize this is not just a gender diversity challenge, and it is also a cultural challenge on how to make an inclusive environment. So we try and do a lot of work in that area, but really the area that we believe we can influence is how to attract more people into the STEM fields, because that serves our engineering part of our business and our IT part of our business. And so we've got initiatives where we support Engineering New Zealand with the programs in schools. The one we're driving at the moment with them is the Power Challenge, which is a program that we target specifically year 7s and 8s in schools, where we ask our staff to offer up their volunteer day, which we sponsor as an organization, to help schools and teachers to get children through this Power Challenge, which is really around renewable energy and how to generate electricity out of light and wind. And we target this year about 100 of our staff involved in it. So hopefully that just contributes a little bit. And I think a lot of organizations are doing similar things, which is great. And hopefully as a collective, it'll just increase the pool that we can gain access to, because I think that's fundamentally the problem. The pool is pretty empty. And how do we fill it up with just more talent? I don't think the argument of whether diversity is good or bad, that's over and done with. We've all recognized the more diverse we are, the better we are collectively. It's just increasing that pool size.
Yeah, absolutely. And good that you're taking that approach of looking at it not just as a company, but working with others on it, on how to solve it as well. But it will take a lot. So then, reflecting on your own career then, Cobus, are there any mistakes that you've made that now that you look back on it really shaped you as a leader?
I think that I've made many mistakes. I still make mistakes, and I think the more senior you become in organizations, the more ambiguity appears, and the less certain you are about the outcome of decisions you make. So I joke now and then and say, hey, there's a 50% chance the decision I make is wrong. So, as long as I make a decision, we'll run the odds. So I think the biggest mistake I tend to make is that I'm not ambitious enough often. And, we're in a conservative industry. We're the ultimate lifeline utility, if you think about it. And therefore, by nature, the decisions we make around technology and business change have to be reasonably conservative. I don't think anybody will thank us if we go and radically change the way we run the electricity grid and then cause mass blackouts. But that means we have to constantly remind ourselves that we have to still be ambitious. in the initiatives we drive and the changes we make, and not be so conservative that we don't try new things and push harder. So I think that's something we all constantly have to remind ourselves is, hey, just push the envelope a little bit constantly. And then all the other mistakes, we all make it. I tell managers, at some point you're going to make a mistake. You just not need to try and make it when you don't cause too much damage. So make the mistakes early on in your career. Don't wait to make a mistake when you can cause huge lasting damage. So find opportunities, and managers give your people opportunities to learn and make those small incremental mistakes, which they'll hopefully learn from. But that's I'm not going to list all my mistakes. It's
So what's the best career advice you've ever received?
I've worked when I just started as a young engineer, because I'm an electronic engineer by trade. My boss explained to me that a company is like a big void, and that every person has got a bubble around them in this void, and there's all these empty spaces. And you have to early in your career decide whether you're going to fill these spaces or not. You can happily live in your little bubble, or you can say, hey, here's some space around me, let's go and fill it. So what I try and encourage people to do is, if you see these spaces, pick the areas that you're really interested in and try and fill it, because there's a void there. And that's usually where the big opportunities lie. So don't just focus on this is my little area, I've got 5 KPIs and I'm going to deliver on it. See how you can stretch your envelope. And I've always found that really helpful. I'm not this sure people around me find that helpful if I fill the void in their areas, but it is something I've always lived with. And then just be inquisitive, just ask the questions on why, and that's not just in and how things work, but also why does the financial reporting look like the way it does? Why is these type of projects always late? Just try and be a bit inquisitive, and that will really help you develop and learn and support you in learning.
Yeah, some great advice there, and really helps people build their capability and their business acumen, thinking more laterally about their organization. So then finally, Cobus, can you tell us what's important to you in the months ahead?
Yeah, we as an industry, as you know, the electricity and the energy industry as a whole is in an interesting place. We've got the carbon future as a world, and what do we do about it, and how do we use electricity and other renewable energy sources to counter it, and as an industry, we're grappling with the use of data and what we can get out of data and the value from it. So, and this is common, I think, in most companies out there. I think there's more data and analytics programs going on now than ever in the history of IT, and some very successful and some dismal failures. And I think we're all trying to get to grips on how do we tap into the value of the data that we hold, and how do we use analytics to get some great insights and improve the world. So like many other organizations, we've got a data analytics program ourselves where we're modernizing some of our capabilities, and I think that's a real focus for us going forward. And then in parallel to it is that we've done some great things in hybrid working, but it's still a constant work in progress on how do we make the experience more acceptable, and there's some rapid developments in that area. And then we will finish off some of the career progression stuff we've done in areas that we can control. I think it's important for me, project management, development, design. There's all pathways that we can be better at formalizing it and being clear. So that's kind of where we focusing. There's a lot of industry activity at the moment that we partake in systems we develop around the electricity market, which obviously is critical for us as an organization. But I think these 3 are the ones that I'm particularly keen on myself for the next year.
Yeah, and not only critical for Transpower, but critical for New Zealand as well, that you're keeping our lights on. Cobus Nel, General Manager for Information Services and Technology at Transpower, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks for the invite.